Welcome to the Big Kickoff Football Show with myself, Roy Shanahan, Neil Dobbs and David Bugle. I think this is a kind of little getaway from the sun. We want the sun so badly, and then all of a sudden it kills us within an inch of our life. So I like it, Dave. Okay, so we'll talk about football in the shade of the homes. Okay, Chelsea, Neil. I think we'll start off with Chelsea because just as we were about to come on, we started to get into the conversation of Chelsea. They're starting to get rid of a few players. Giroud is gone. As you said off air, Abraham is looking to be pushed out. So there must be someone coming in.
Yeah, with Giroud gone, he was always your kind of plan B backup striker anyway. And it's not like he played a lot last year. And I think as soon as Thomas Tuchel came in, that was it, game over for him. But more interestingly was that Tammy Abraham completely got practically frozen out of the squad, where he was giving every other player, midfielders, defenders, an opportunity. Abraham was the only one that didn't seem to get the chance and made a little bit of noise about it on his social media. So I think that spelled the death for him. I don't think Tuchel fancies him. I don't think he sees him as a target man, as the type of guy. You know, this is a guy that's used to dealing with your Mbappes and Neymars. So maybe he just took one look at him and didn't fancy him. But the fact that they're touting him around, you know, he's been linked to Arsenal of all teams, a couple of other teams. You know, they're not getting rid of two of their strikers unless they have somebody nailed on that's going to come in. Now, who that is, we don't know. There's a rumour in the paper today, 50 million for Lewandowski, which seems a fair shout. If they were to get him, that would be some coup and a half, to be honest with you. And for 50 million for Chelsea, that's nothing really. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any legs.
Yeah, Dave, if Lewandowski was to go to Chelsea, first of all, they'd have to have someone coming in. They're not going to let him go without getting a striker in. But also, when you look at the strikers who have been at Chelsea and the ones who have failed miserably, you've got the likes of Morata, Higuain, Torres, Kezman, Mewtwo, Falcao, Chris Sutton and Shevchenko. You know, beware of Chelsea if you're a striker.
Absolutely. And as he said, whether the transfer has legs, does Lewandowski have legs for the Premier League? That's what's going to be interesting. He's 32. To be honest, if anything, it'd be great business for Bayern to get 50 million for a 32-year-old player. Listen, the guy knows how to put it in the back of the net. Like Harry Kane's not blessed with loads of pace, but the guy knows how to put it in. So look, everyone before they kick a ball, if they were to get somebody like him, you'd be very fearful of them getting him. Because as good as Werner has been for 90% of what he does, it's the final 10% that's the most important, and that's putting in the back of the net, on which he struggles. So there's no denying it. Rumours or no rumours, they can pick names out of the hat. They're definitely on the move for a striker, and there's no denying it.
Yeah, and of course, Neil, they've had an official inquiry for Haaland put back from Dortmund. So it does mean they mean business. And which would you go for? Would you go for a 140 million Haaland or a 50 million Lewandowski?
Well, Lewandowski is, you know, his track record is second to none, more or less, in the last 5 years. I mean, he's probably the best. He's, you know, the Harry Kane of, you know, yesteryear almost. Now, whether Lewandowski can do it for another 2 to 3 years, time will tell. The one thing I would say is Bayern looked extremely ordinary without Lewandowski up front last year when he picked up the knock. Yeah. So it shows how much of a difference he made to them alone. Now, Bayern ain't going to let him go unless there's someone to replace him. For Chelsea, you see, I don't think they're not like a normal club where money, you know, you don't want to squander money. Like, you're after naming off players that went there for crazy money, didn't make it, no big deal, ship them on, bring in the next guy. I would say if I was Tuchel and looking at one of these guys, if you're interested in building a project, 2 to 3 years, you're looking at Haaland. If you're interested, which I think he is, in the here and now, I think he needs to deliver success. I think he understands, you know, let's be honest, Tuchel's not going to be at Chelsea in 4 years' time. It just ain't going to happen. So for him, I could quite easily see him push for someone like Lewandowski. He's the final article. He's ready to go. And man, what a boost he would give a team like that.
Yeah, I think I forgot Lukaku as well. Forget about some of the players that they do have. Dave, we push on. We leave Chelsea there because... Well, actually, I'll ask you one other question. Is there anyone else that they need to get? Because everyone's saying striker as if that's going to be the complete article then. But is there any other positions that they need to strengthen? I mean, they're European champions.
Yeah, it's more... I think that's the obvious one that's going to go straight into the first 11. After that, then, it could be a bit of tweaking of the squad more so than anything. Because if Jorginho stays, you've got him and Kante there, along with Kovacic and a few others who I think are still quite young and have the legs. I think it'd be more bulking up the numbers, to be honest, more than anything. So as regards somebody who's going to go, well, maybe centre half, Thiago Silva, 35, 36. You know, if he's going to be a mainstay, like maybe a centre half. Like they've missed the boat a little bit, maybe in the likes of Ben White, who's gone to Arsenal, but maybe centre half for me. That'd be about it at the moment. Other than that, I'm not saying they're finished or they're the done deal, but in terms of real quality that's available, obviously up front is up for grabs. After that, it's going to be a bit scrappy for. I know Varane's around, so I know there's heavy rumours for United. So, you know, the fact that he's French, you've got Paris. There's 3 or 4 clubs who'll be watching him. It's not going to be an easy run for United. So maybe Varane, maybe. You never know. Because he's only 28, could be the mainstay for a few years, a bit like if Lewandowski came in fresh. So maybe centre half, but that's about it for me.
Okay, and I'll stay with you. Your favourite subject, Liverpool.
Yeah.
Who have they got in Konate so far? But as Neil pointed out, they've got their 3 centre-backs back again, Matip, Gomez and Virgil van Dijk. How do Liverpool approach this season? Is it, we've got them 3 players back, we're strong enough, we're strengthened by those players, and we don't really need to do too much?
If it was the start...
I'm talking managerial, not fans. The fans will want new players.
Well, yeah, because if it was the start of last season, I'd be like, yeah, grand. You know, like I wasn't too bothered that they didn't sign anyone because I thought they did such a good job the year before. I'd be like, yeah, maybe give them another year. Obviously, we know what happened. It's been and gone. But this year, if nothing's done apart from Konate, I fear we're standing still a little bit, unless, as what Neil said in the text this morning, about maybe a 3 at the back and a slightly change in tactic, because if Phillips is staying, that's 5 centre-halves. So maybe that's what he's going to do, because he does tweak a little bits and pieces. Now, this will be a big tweak, but he does, if you look at his body of work from the start, there's been little minor change, not necessarily always in personnel. It could be in a tactic or whatever. So unless he's going to do something like that, but I would be a bit fearful of standing still if that's all there is, unless he's going to do some mad tactical change that's going to upset the rule book. But for me, yeah, there's heavy rumours for a lot of centre midfielders. Saul Niguez is the big one. So I think they're obviously in the hunt. The fact that there's a lot of rumours, they're probably in the hunt to replace Gini Wijnaldum. But yeah, leaving the front 3 alone again, I think is risky. I'm a bit fearful that we've been caught up and passed by City, and now it's a case of what are we going to do? We can't just take out the checkbook. So it's going to be very interesting to see, is there going to be a little change in what he does, a little tweak in what he does with this 3 at the back, which is becoming more popular. And then obviously he's going to look for midfield. But after that, very, very quiet, unless it's just going to be a click of the finger the way Liverpool have done over the last couple of years. And all of a sudden a player just arrives and no one has a clue. But they're the only real heavy rumours. Obviously the centre-half done. And then midfield. And after that, very under the radar. So a little bit nervy, but you never know. He might be making a tweak in his starting 11.
Okay, Neil, so you brought up the 3 at the back when we discussed this earlier. Why do you think he could go 3 at the back? And if he does go 3 at the back, you're nearly looking at maybe a front 2.
Yeah, I think, put like this, you're going to have to reshuffle up further up the field if you go 3 at the back. It's a little like England when they played in the final there, when they went for the 2 wing backs. So I think Liverpool anyway, say for example, if you played Firmino in the holding role and you're playing Trent Alexander and you're playing Robbo, what ends up happening is they play as attacking wing backs more or less anyway, and then your CDM drops in between the 2 centre halves. So that's kind of being done to an extent when you're on the front foot. It's a funny thing with 3 at the back with Liverpool. I think the only reason why they would be a little bit maybe leaned and quiet towards it was because we generally get caught out. If you were calling him the Achilles heel, you can ask Sam Allardyce, what does he tell you? Turn over the possession, launch a 70-yarder over the 2 centre-backs' heads and get up the field and get at them. So maybe with the 3 guys staying at the back, it gives you a little bit more stability. I think you've added Konate, who can play left or right-hand side of a defensive 2, but he also has played on the right-hand side of a 3 at Leipzig. So that gives you a little bit more kind of specialised right side of a 3. Virgil van Dijk obviously then comes in. But again, it's you're sacrificing a little at the back and you're sacrificing a little bit up front if he's going to go 2 up top, which we've never done under Klopp. Absolutely never done. He likes to do wide attackers. I think it got to the late stage last season where he needed to try something different. We talked about it on the show where Robertson was overlapping wide left, almost in Mane's position, and Mane was playing inside of Robertson. And it happened on the other side as well with a little bit of Trent and Mo. So maybe he's thinking something like that. Could he be thinking Roberto Firmino drops into a 3 in the middle and occupies in behind the 2? That could also be an option. But I think if the Euros have shown us anything, is that you need to have that little bit of flexibility. And Liverpool maybe have gone through a cycle under Klopp now of 4 years where they need a plan B. We're always talking about a plan B. This could be it that gives you a little bit more flexibility. My biggest worry, though, would be, and Dave hit the nail on the head there, standing still in the midfield. You're not replacing Gini Wijnaldum's 60-odd games a season. And you're relying on the likes of Chiesa and you're relying on the likes of Henderson, Milner, to stay fit, which they have not done for 3 years. So that'd be my worry.
So, Dave, if it is a 3 at the back, and he might go 3-4-3, he might still stick with the front 3 and have a 3-4-3. Who misses out on the back line in the back 3?
I think the back 3 will be probably Konate. I'd go with Gomez and Van Dijk at the moment because of Gomez's mobility. I think Matip, unfortunately, struggles to last the season. But he'd be my most reliable to partner Van Dijk if it was a back 4, ironically enough. And then I have the 2 obvious lads as the wing back / midfielders. 2 guys in the midfield, obviously Fabinho being one of them. I'd imagine with another, but there's 3 or 4 lads to go there if they don't sign anyone. And then the 3 up top. The more you look at it when you see it like that, the 3 at the back kind of doesn't add up because you've about 6 midfielders there to go into 2 positions. So I don't know. As much as it might look like it, and let's face it, we forgot the wall that is Nat Phillips as well. It doesn't look like he's been shipped out anywhere. So you have 5 centre-halves this year.
Maybe he's super careful this year.
But look, the more I'm kind of talking myself out of this 3 at the back now when you look at it like that. You only have 2 in the midfield out of 4 or 5, 6 players. You've actually Chamberlain as well there. And if Minamino doesn't go anywhere, they're obviously a bit of a clear out this year. And they're trying to get 1 or 2 off the books. But yeah, now that we're talking it out, I'd be a bit surprised if he goes with it now to only have 2 out of 2 into 6 doesn't go. So.
Well, he could very well, Dave, just not be bothered to get another midfielder in, and this is way of sorting it out. And he's still going to fit his three up front. Would you like to see him get a centre forward in Firmino and replace Firmino or back up Firmino?
Potentially replace. I think there's too much emphasis on the 2 lads, and they play wide. Like I think the main goal threat needs to come from the middle. It needs to come from right in the middle of the park. I would say if Firmino is to stick around, he could drop into a midfield 3 if we go back to a 4-3-3. He could be the attacking guy. He has the legs. He likes to do some of the defensive stuff. So there's no reason why he can't support if they got somebody of a caliber of a Lewandowski. I'm not saying they are. But if they got somebody of that caliber in your Kanes and Haalands and Mbappe's, like, I'm sorry, Firmino's your number 2 striker, end of story. But it just depends on what type of striker they're going to go for.
Yeah, okay. We might come back to that because we'll be talking about Harry Kane a little later on. Manchester United, Neil, Jadon Sancho is practically a done deal now. He's going to be at Manchester United. It only took a couple of years. That's probably quick for Manchester United. Varane and Trippier, odd one with Trippier, but then again, maybe they're getting rid of Williams and Tellez is rumoured to be probably going as well. So maybe Trippier is going to be back up, but then I'd be surprised if he goes as backup after being in an Atletico Madrid team that won the league and an England team that got to a European Championship final. What way do you see, first of all, the Sancho deal working out? Is that enough? And if he got the 2 other players, is that enough?
I think it'd make a massive difference. The Varane deal would be my main one if I were Man United and looking at that. Like, you replace Lindelof with Varane. The guy has won multiple Champions Leagues, La Liga titles, the experience, plays for France. You look at the caliber of player he's kept out of the French side. That would be a massive deal, absolutely massive. He would have been the type of guy Mourinho would have wanted when he went in there. Proper leader. Massive experience. He's a here and now player that goes straight into your first 11 alongside Harry Maguire. You think they would complement each other because Varane has the pace. The Sancho side of things, listen, we've said it multiple times. It's the money. if you got Sancho for a bit less money, somewhere that you kind of thought he's a prospect as well as someone that's beginning to come good, you might say, yeah. But I just think when you're hitting the kind of 70, 80 million mark, it just, I don't know, it kind of takes the gloss off the transfer. But look, let's put our Chelsea hat on. Like, Chelsea don't care about spending X amount of money on players, and no one ever balks at the price. So Man United are a rich club. What do they care? You just want to get the guys that you want. So I think the Trippier and Sancho deal could be an interesting one, because Trippier will be part if you're playing a back three. Again, Trippier plays wide right. He could be your attacking wing back, and I think he's better than Wan-Bissaka, as everyone keeps saying, going forward. They seem to be getting a great price tag on him. Like they're saying like 4 to 5 million, which seems crazy. That could be a no-brainer quite easily. Again, he brings experience. Sancho for me is the only question mark, and I think we've kind of alluded to him multiple times in the show, saying there's a big step up from the German league, the Premier League. But he's a guy they've identified 3 years ago now, and they'll finally get their man. So the proof will be in the pudding when Sancho gets a run of games in the side. But listen, he could be the missing link that you've been looking for all along. I definitely think it will enhance United, a centre back, right winger. Whether it's enough to push them ahead of City, we'll see. Maybe they still need that striker to make that happen.
Okay. Is it enough to push them ahead of City, Dave? And
no.
I knew your answer was going to be no, so I have another question just about ready. They obviously need a centre forward. They have Cavani, but Cavani surely isn't going to play every game. And if Cavani's not there, it's been proven over the last 2 years, they just don't have anyone else.
No, 100%. Unless Greenwood then slots back into the centre of the park as well. And a bit of a tandem between him and Cavani, because I don't think Cavani's going to be a 50, 60 game.
Do you think Greenwood's good enough to be a centre forward? He hasn't shown it for me.
Started, to be honest. Yeah. So I think that's where he started. So maybe because if they put up so much of an effort for Sancho, he's obviously going to go straight into the team, in my opinion. So maybe that's where they're going to, if they want to fit in Greenwood, that's probably the likeliest scenario. Otherwise, he's just going to be a backup. The Trippier one, lads, and the reason why some of these players up for grabs in Europe, Gareth Bale's one of them as well. In Spain, the new La Liga regulations, you're only allowed 3 non-EU players, and Trippier is probably the 4th of the 3 that they want to keep, and hence why he's up for grabs. And Bale, obviously, there's no way they're going to keep him as a 3rd non-EU player, so he's going to be up for grabs for somebody for a loan for the year. Although Espirito Santo quite clearly said this week, no, not for him. But in relation back to United, so yeah, Trippier, that could potentially spell bad news for Wan-Bissaka. It'd be very weird to bring somebody like that in and not play, unless it's a really fine contract that Trippier's quite happy to sit there and rot away, but I doubt if he would. So that'll be an interesting scenario. And Sancho is definitely going to start. That doesn't mean he's going to be there as a mainstay for the long-term future, but he's definitely going to start because he's been a seriously wanted man by United. So to not get a striker, I think it'd be a big risk unless they seem to fancy somebody else that they have, because they've had a few there. Even I know Rashford plays out on the left, but he started up top as well. I know, people, he's much better on the left, but some of these guys started there. Why can't they go back? It's one of them things. So they're definitely going to be in the race for some of the strikers that are up for grabs. But whether the likes of a Haaland or Mbappe are a step too far money-wise for this season, considering what else they're trying to buy, maybe. I don't think they'll be in the race for them, that caliber, but watch this space.
Yeah, I've got the feeling, Neil, that Manchester United are not in the race for a centre forward. Just like Dave said, I actually do believe that they feel that Cavani and Greenwood will be the players to play up there. Everyone talks about how great Greenwood is. He is a really, really talented player. He's got a sweet left foot. I just don't know if he has the physicality to deal with centre halves the way he does with the right full or left full, depending on what side he's coming in from. So I just think that could be a problem for Manchester United. And I think if they don't get a centre forward in, although Cavani may not want to play second fiddle to a main centre forward either, and that may cause problems. So they might have already set their marker here. Rashford from the left, I think, is his best position. Still can do a job down the centre, so that's fine. It's not the worst of positions. But Neil, my question's leading to you now. Everyone is saying, any pundit I've ever heard over the last 2 to 3 months says their midfield, Fred, if they're going to win anything, they can't have Fred and McTominay in there. Do you agree?
I think it's a balance. Now, look, if I was looking at Man United, if I was out of Gunnar Solskjaer, I'd be thinking to myself, I would love to swap out a Fred or a McTominay for a Kante or a Jorginho or, a Rodri, someone that can do the donkey work and do the defensive work, but also add a bit of quality. So 100%, I think they're lacking behind a lot of teams in the Premier League on creative midfielders. It's as simple as that. Now, that said, if you were to put Sancho on the right, Rashford on the left, Fernandes in front, in behind the striker, and the striker can be anyone, Cavani, that's four very, very attack-minded players that are going to be on the field. And I think in most games, it's kind of that, 70-30 thing, where 70% of the games it will go well, and then 3 games where you're playing teams that will match you man for man, like a Chelsea. That's maybe where you're going to run a cropper, because Fred and McTominay won't retain the ball enough. It's actually like the English national side issue, where you have the 2 blockers. If the 2 blockers don't retain the ball, aren't comfortable on the ball, you're not going to retain possession, and you're not going to be able to break them down in the manner that you want. I think most other top teams in the Premier League have that guy that can unlock defences from deep. Relying on Fernandes to do it from, the 9 or to 10 in behind is a big ask for him game after game, when he doesn't get enough creative service from the 2 boys behind him. So yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Sancho, Varane would make a massive difference, but to go to the next level, they have to be dominating and bullying teams, not just, your mid-range table teams. You need to be able to get at the lads in the top 5 and 6, and you're only going to do that with the best, holding midfielders, but that are better in possession of the ball.
Yeah. Okay, that's Man United, and for me, they still are probably 1, 2, 3, 4 players away from challenging the likes of City, who have 2 players in every position. When we talk about City, Dave, there's huge links to Harry Kane and Jack Grealish at the moment. There's going to be huge links anyhow, but it's strong links. I mean, the inquiry was made and it's an official inquiry about Harry Kane. They actually put 100 million bid in, which was rejected by Spurs. There's talk about 100 million for Grealish as well. If those 2 players did go into Manchester City, who's going to lose out?
Jesus. I think that's fairly obvious up top. So that one's easy. Grealish now is an interesting one, because does he fit into the midfield rotation? Or does he be a mainstay, and a certain winger who was struggling for games before he came into the England squad, Raheem Sterling, does he play him out left, or does he put him in the midfield, like right in the heart of midfield at the front of the midfield 3? Because with Guardiola, you never know. That guy could put him left back for all we know, the way he goes. So I'm going to just go, he'll put him in the front of a midfield maybe, or out left. So Jesus is the easy one, and possibly Sterling. But then again, it could really light a fire under Foden, because he really needs to step up. I know he's still young, but he really needs to start owning himself, because he didn't really in the Euros, and obviously he was a bit quiet in the Champions League, and it's very easy to criticise him the whole lot, but he really needs to step up now. Otherwise, he could just be another player like everyone else, instead of the raw talent that we're hoping him for to be. So with Grealish coming in, it really could potentially light a fire under him. So I don't know who he's going to. Maybe Sterling. I'll stick my neck out and say Sterling could be in trouble.
Yeah. Neil, Sterling is probably in my thoughts. Bernardo Silva didn't set the world alight at the Euros. Wasn't setting the world alight towards the end of the season. So you could see either of those. Pep Guardiola wouldn't think twice about dropping any player or getting rid of any player if he thought it was going to make him better. Realistically, can you see them getting to 2 players, Neil? Or is it, I don't know, what financial fair play? 200 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, surely they'd have to sell or do something in order to get both of them in. That'd be an unbelievable transfer window, getting Grealish and Harry Kane. Again, Harry Kane is basically the pinnacle of your transfer window at the moment. Like, he's up there, with goal scorer wise, your Mbappe's. He's that type of profile. Or a Lewandowski. You just can't buy these guys on normal teams can't buy these guys. I would say for City, it's unusual to see a team go a season like they did without a recognised centre forward, a kind of a target man, which is why he's given De Bruyne, he's given Sterling, he's given Foden this kind of freedom to roam. And I think maybe that's where Foden becomes unstuck in the English team, for example, because they want him to play a set position, be it wide at the front 3. So is Pep thinking to himself, yeah, it worked, and I want to continue doing that? But you would imagine, you look at the caliber of Kane, surely he's got to be their number one target. They're not lacking in any other department on the field. They really aren't. Kane has to be the number one guy. I would say if they secure Kane, they wouldn't give a monkeys about getting Grealish. They have enough quality up front, guys that can carry the ball, guys that are skillful. They're not a team that would be crying out for a guy like Grealish. So money-wise, no, and it doesn't mean they won't be greedy, though, I guess, If you get one, you get two. Their biggest problem is going to be dealing with Daniel Levy, and does he leave them waiting to the last minute in order to secure the deal? That's your biggest stumbling block when you're trying to buy Harry Kane.
There's rumours at the moment, as I said, rumours, we can make them up all we want, that Kane, they're strategizing how they're going to try and push the move along, the Kane camp. So that's already starting to come out now. So if the wheels are already in motion and City are already putting in bids, I'll be shocked if it's not done. But as you said, Neil, how long it's going to be remains to be seen. But yeah, the Kane camp is starting to set things out about how are we going to try and get this move to happen, because they obviously know what Levy's like,
Yeah, and when you look at Harry Kane, it looks like from every angle that you look at, from the Kane camp to City camp, even people who are friends and coaches and everything, everyone keeps saying City is the best fit for him, Dave. Why have Liverpool not been talked about with any big strikers, and especially Harry Kane, when you know that they're around?
Yeah.
Surely it's not because they can't afford it. Liverpool are a big club.
Yeah, of course they could. Like, there's no, like, they like to keep it tight, and they like to stay within the parameters. But I'm sure if a player of that caliber came, let's face it, they can swing the extra God knows how many million it is apart. Like, I know they like to sell in order to buy, and that's why the likes of Origi and a few of these other boys are up for grabs this year to try and maybe get 30, 40 million on top of the kitty. But I'd like to think they will give them the extra 50 or 60 million, whatever it needs, because the revenue that comes in from Liverpool, they're up there. All you have to do is look at the figures for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and obviously winning the league and the Champions League puts them right up back in with the big boys in short-term earnings. So there's no reason why they can't swing the extra few quid. So it is very unlike Liverpool. I know, as I said, there could have been very distant rumours because he flirted, like obviously at the Alexander-Arnold fucking celebration, and he's always said he likes the way they play and he likes Klopp. There was the Mbappe rumour, but that's gone completely cold now. So it could have been just a bit of typical wrapping paper for the old fish and chips now, but maybe they were trying to flirt with it and they were only going down the one track. But like I said before about Liverpool, you just click a finger and all of a sudden somebody arrives. But I think with somebody like Harry Kane, you'd hear about that whisper beforehand, no matter where he's going to. So I don't even think Liverpool could stay under the radar if they were trying to get him. But it is surprising because there's 3 or 4 of them up for grabs, and I think it's obvious. Well, I think it's obvious we need one. But if anyone knows his team best, it's Mr. Klopp. So I'm surprised they haven't been more heavier linked. But yeah, who knows? As I said, who knows? The ticker tape on Sky Sports News in the morning could say breaking news, You just don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. For some reason,
I don't think so. But it looks a 22-year-old from the middle of nowhere. And
that's the way Liverpool are now, isn't it? They don't seem to be going after the guys that have already. They're looking for that one who's under the radar, cost a little bit less, but they've done their homework and there's a bit of quality coming in. So it doesn't look like that's the case. Manchester United, it doesn't look like it's the case because they look like they're going to settle. Otherwise, there would be probably a bid in already. Chelsea. I'm surprised Chelsea haven't sniffed, although they could easily jump on that if they can't get the other 2, So
Would he go? Would he have loyalties to Spurs?
That's the thing. I think he actually would. I think he would. So I think
go.
I think he would stay or not go, because I think he would be loyal in that regard. I think Manchester City, it's all out. I can't see him being anywhere by the end of August but being at Manchester City, because I can't see him staying at Spurs. How long is it going to take Nuno Santos to build that team up? And he's not going to wait around. So, it's an interesting one. Jack Grealish, Neil, he's so good he can't get into the England side. So what does that say about anyone looking to purchase him? Is he just going to be stuck at Aston Villa again?
He might well be. And listen, this is another scenario of the Harry Kane thing here. The price tag becomes a huge issue. Actually, do you know what this reminds me of? Wilf Zaha, when he was at Palace and everybody wanted him. And they kept saying, oh, you want him? Great, 70 million. And people went, whoa. Yeah, you're all right. We'll give you another year. And then you go back the following year. What do you want from 70 million? We'll give him another year. No one's talking about Wilf Zaha anymore. So Jack Grealish falls into that regard where I think he's been priced out of a move. I think they're very clever in how they're doing it because like he is their prized possession, captain of the club, very high profile. They want to get every last cent out of him and they're dead right to do it. But like that, this transfer window, Sancho has answered United's call. That'll be for decent money, say 60, 70 mil. Harry Kane, if someone's going to buy him, 100, 150 mil. After that, then who has the 100 million to say we're going to buy Jack Grealish? I think if he was, let's be honest, 50, 60 million tomorrow, you'd have 5 or 6 suitors for him. But I think they're pricing him to only where City, only where Chelsea or Man United can afford a guy like that. I don't think, we're saying there about Liverpool, he's not under their, it's not the norm for Liverpool to splash out on a guy like that unless like Van Dijk, when he was the only option they felt and they had to go big in the money. Like with Alisson, they had a massive problem they had to solve. They threw the money. Do we have a problem out wide left? Sadio Mane's there quiet last season, but been brilliant or every other season. It's not compelling enough for me to spend 100 million on a Jack Grealish. Now, in the ideal world, I would absolutely snap the hand off Villa to take Jack Grealish. I think he's a superb talent. I think he can change a game. He can unlock defenses. He has skill. And the one thing that I know he goes over, but he takes a lot of big hits as well. But I think he's an element of bravery about him. He never shirks responsibility for England, for Villa. He takes on the players. He makes the same runs every single game. I think he's a big game player. And, I would say maybe Southgate definitely underused him for the Euros. I think he should have given him at least 30 minutes a game. I don't understand why not. But that was his call to make at the end of the day. But for me, I think he's a top player. You'd be looking for him.
Yeah, it sounds like it could very well be good news for Aston Villa fans. Maybe another year with their favourite player and captain. Dave, Everton, Rafa Benitez has got the job. Today, there's talk of Andreas Townsend nearly finalising the deal. He's out of contract like so many at Crystal Palace. He was waiting for a deal. I think he had a deal on the table with, it was either Galatasaray or one of those Turkish teams. I could be wrong with Galatasaray. I think it's one of the other ones, Fenerbahce or something like that. But he wanted to stay at home if possible. Would Andreas Townsend be a good player for Everton to have? Is that progression?
Let's be honest, lads. Top 8 is enough this year. Progression for Everton, there's not much more they can progress unless they get the massive checkbook. Like, I'm going to bang that drum over and over and over again until they get the shake in or some other. They're not going to break that top 6 without buckets of money, unless it's a quick in and out job as good as him. For me, yes, he would be an upgrade because James Rodriguez just doesn't have the legs for the Premier League. He doesn't seem to want to play in the Premier League consistently enough. Bit too physical for him. So if he plays for him, without a shadow of a doubt, Townsend's a lively player. If Benitez can get into him and get it a bit like what Allardyce used to do with Bolton, this is your last chance, and he used to get that last year or two out of everyone. And this is his last chance to really kind of be at a half decent level to step up from Palace. And if he can tap into that, yeah, because he's been a decent player and he gets some cracking goals from outside the box. But he'd be an improvement of one or two of the players that they have without a shadow of a doubt going forward, because they were very stale in the last third of the season going forward. Rodriguez, as I said, fell out of love with them. Obviously, they had a few injuries with the guys between Alan and Doucouré. They missed that little kind of hole, like access to kind of push the other lads on. So, it sounds going to be a decent move. And for a freebie, it's a great start because then they can put their money to better use elsewhere. Yeah,
Neil, does this set the tone for what way Benitez is going to work in the transfer market, do you think? As Dave said, Rodriguez, that's a Galactico, if you want to call it, from Ancelotti. He's going to go down the route of maybe a Brian Clough route of, we'll get players in that I know will work hard, who have a bit of quality, and we'll turn them into better players and we'll be a better team for it.
I think the interesting thing from Benitez's point of view, normally when he goes to a club, he needs to work on the defensive aspects, stop them conceding goals, set them up tactically at the back. I don't think he has to do any of that this time around. I think Ancelotti had them absolutely spot on. If anything, my complaint, and was in previous shows, they're too bloody negative. They won't get out of their own half. They have this thing of going to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, aimless balls, be it from Pickford, these 90-yarders, and he's up front by himself, or maybe has Richarlison in behind him. They're too predictable and it's like they don't want to take a risk. Sometimes you want to see the shackles turned off. They've got good defenders. They've got their midfield. They've got probably the same problem as Man United have with the two lads. They're probably the one flavour, Decore and Alan, but they're very, very stable. They're very, very secure. What they need is, like your Townsends and one or two other guys going forward, release the shackles a little bit, because Calvert-Lewin will get you goals, Richarlison will get you goals. You just have a little bit more belief. Now, as I say that, is Rafa Benitez the guy that's going to unlock the Ancelotti shackles? Maybe not. Maybe he's thinking, I'm going to do what Ancelotti did, but I'm going to be a little bit as pragmatic and hope that we can squeeze out one or two more results than he got, because Everton were in a very good position for most of the season. So there's not a whole lot wrong with them for reaching, 6th, 7th, 8th. The question is, and as Dave is saying, it's a massive ask to go above that. It's a massive ask to break into the top 4. Last year was a bit of a freak, and I think all the top 4 or 5 big teams now this year are getting their house in order, and it's a big ask for Everton to break into that. But I think they've got a good manager. I think they've got a good infrastructure. One or two just clever players with a little bit more forward impetus, they could do very, very well up there.
Yeah, and if you look at it, just to say on that signing alone, that's pace. So maybe he's looking at, we're going to counter attack, and we'll have Richarlison, who has plenty of pace. We'll have Townsend, plenty of pace. And you said Calvert-Lewin up there knows how to put a ball away if he gets the service. So, yeah, it sounds very Benitez-like, and he's probably going to get those pacey type players in. As you said, their midfield seems solid enough. Their backline seemed solid enough. I'm sure Benitez will tighten that up, so it'll be very interesting.
He's an upgrade in Jermaine Pennant anyway.
Neil Dobbs, if you remember, when Rafa had his most success with Liverpool, he had the Torres-Gerrard relationship. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they're in the same vein, but Calvert-Lewin with Richarlison, if you give them the right ball on the counter-attack and one or two other players flying past them on the wings, be it, pacey wingers, they could definitely have a formula for success there. But he has to bring them up to the next level. I said it a couple of times in the show last year, watching Everton sometimes was absolutely boring to hell. You drive you nuts, and they weren't giving it enough going forward. So hopefully he can correct that this season for them. Or not.
Dave, Arsenal have, and it looks like, succeeded in purchasing Ben White. It hasn't been signed and sealed, but albeit nearly everything is done, bar that. 50 million. Watching him last year, watching him the year before with Leeds, he's a solid player, very calm player, consistent player. He's physical when he wants to be. He really is a top centre half, isn't he?
Yeah, and the 50 million, it sounds like a lot, but to be honest, the Van Dijks and Maguires have ruined fees for centre halves. And even just briefly, even his little cameo in the friendlies for England, I would have said he might have snuck in ahead of one of the other lads, but he really did just stick his neck, his chest out, and kind of. I'm sure he gave Southgate something to think about, but very dependable, very very un-Arsenal-like, if you know what I mean. And that's exactly as Luiz can have one great game, but then have 3 shockers. You know what I mean? He can have that one defining game where he's just everywhere and he's mad up for it, and then he's just nowhere to be found. So this is exactly what they need, and it'll be just interesting to see, will he be able to stand up and lead the charge now and be the leader of that back line, because that's something that they've been screaming out for far too long. They bring in 3 and 4 centre-halves all the time, but they're just very samey. Gabriel came in with a bit of a reputation last year and didn't see too much. I know he got a few injuries, but this is, in my opinion, everything you've said, I bang on, in total agreement. It just seems to be the right type of move and the right type of consistent centre-half that they need. But obviously, we know there's plenty of other gaps, and they're already on his back, because I think they lost up in Scotland yesterday, didn't they? And so they're already on his back already. So it begins. But if he can get that type of caliber of player, that consistent player who might turn into a bit of a leader in the midfield and up front, he might start turning it around. But it's a start. But whether Arteta's going to get that time remains to be seen.
Yeah, Neil, that's so. Generally, over the last few years, for a good while now, their transfer policy they've shot themselves in the foot, basically. And for some reason, they seem to love an old Chelsea reject. Now, as you alluded to earlier on, might be going after another one with Tammy Abraham. Now, bit harsh to call Tammy a reject. He's just not getting in. But is he the type of centre forward that they need, or did it need to look elsewhere?
I mean, Arsenal, I don't know. It's hard to put your finger where they keep going wrong in the transfer market. It's not like they don't spend money, and they do spend money. Like, they've been linked with, a couple of players now that are, you would imagine, punching above their weight, but yet they're still linked. It sounds like they still have the money. Abraham, depending on what they got him for, could be an interesting character. I think he's a guy with a hell of a lot to prove. I think he's got good feet. I think he'll get you goals. Just depends on what system maybe you play in, and are you going to set your team up to play to his strength? I don't think Chelsea did. I don't think he was their type of player under Tuchel. That was the end of that. Lampard had a lot of faith in him. But like, Arsenal have Lacazette there. So is he an upgrade at the end of the day in Lacazette? They put Aubameyang out wide most of the time when they want to play Lacazette and Aubameyang together. So could you see Abraham playing through the middle and Lacazette one side, and then like a Saka or a Smith Rowe or something like that then the other side? It'll be a gamble, because I think this is Arteta's year now where he needs to start getting it right. I think he needs to start showing some progress. He's had enough time in the seat now, 1 or 2 transfer windows. So, like, if I'm trying to think to myself, if I'm Arteta sitting there pre-summer and you're going, right, I want to improve my side, am I going to the chairman and saying, get me Tammy Abraham? Man, that would be a gamble and a half. I'm not saying it couldn't pay off if you got him at the right money, but it would be a big gamble for Arteta to say, this is the guy that's going to, enhance our team or move our team up a level.
Smells a bit like Danny Welbeck for me. I think Tammy Abraham is a fine player at a certain level. I think you brought it up a couple of weeks ago, Roy, with the likes of Norwich. I think if he's a big fish in a small pond, I think that's where you see the best of him. If he goes to Arsenal, I just think there's just a bit of a Welbeck off it. I just don't see him taking off. But if you put him in the mid-range to lower, I think he will, because the focus will be on him, and I think it's obviously what he wants. Or his missus certainly does anyway.
Yeah. What about, you look at Odegaard, Dave, he's left. Now they're starting to talk about bringing him back again. For me, he didn't do enough when he was there to prove that he was worth taking back. So while the Ben White one gives you hope for Arsenal, they're still sniffing around the same sort of wishy-washy, flaky, I don't know, I'm kind of happy playing football, but maybe I'm not a winner type footballer.
It reminds me a bit of Liverpool for about 10 years, where we were trying to get the best of the rest. You know what I mean? Like, you weren't really up there. Like, you look at like your Uniteds and Chelseas and Cities, and even the Liverpool, we're talking about Kanes and Haalands and Mbappes. We're not talking about Tammy Abrahams. And that's kind of where it just reeks a little bit of Liverpool for about 10 or 15 years, when we were just trying to get back into that bubble, because it just seems to be all they're good enough for now, because they're not offering enough Champions League football. And money-wise, I don't think it's too much of a problem. It's just they're not looked at in the same way as the other boys are at the moment. They're the kind of the I'm not going to say it, the ugly duckling, so to speak. I nearly went somewhere else there, but that's who they are at the moment, and I think that's why the likes of your Odegaards instead of I can't. I'm trying to think who's hot at the moment. With Grealish for that matter. Although ironically, lads, Villa were trying to get Smith Rowe for 25-30 million, and is that because they're fearful that Mr. Grealish will go, and they're still after him? They've put in a bid of 30, I think it was 25-30, and maybe they've gone up to 35 for Smith Rowe. So are they preparing for Mr. Grealish to go, or are they just sniffing it? I don't know, it'd be interesting. But if he was to go, that'd be just typical Arsenal, like, their latest up and coming talent, and they let go. It'd be just typical of Arsenal if they did.
Yeah, first of all, I couldn't see Grealish going to Arsenal. So
no, not to Arsenal, but
but I wouldn't know why they'd let go of one of their players unless it was something like a swap deal or something like that, But that's what I'm saying, that their intentions are always of a lower quality, and for the last few years, well, for a good few years now, they blamed the stadium, blah blah blah. Now they don't have a stadium to blame, but they're still showing that lack of I don't know what's the word of a winner's sort of vision,
ambition,
where they're going for these mid-table sort of players, hoping they'll kick on for them. These players that don't get in at other clubs, or maybe the best player from another club, but he's not really shining. Is there a danger, Neil, that Arsenal, who finished just above mid-table, is there a danger they get sucked into a position where they can't get out of this mid-table position, and then all of a sudden they're looking down rather than looking up?
Yeah, I look, listen, Arsenal, I think, made a cardinal error, and it was a decade ago or 15 years ago when they start allowing their best player to leave every summer. It happened about 4 or 5 years in a row under Wenger. They let go of Van Persie, they let go of Fabregas, they let go of Nasri, they let go of these guys that were really shining for them. And then after a while, they were being picked at by the bigger sides. Henry left. Now, again, this was back in the day when you never really blamed the guy. The excuse was, oh, well, their dream has always been to go and play in Barcelona, or their dream has always been to go and play in Real Madrid. But Man United never lost their top talent like that on a consistent basis. Ronaldo left, probably the only high-profile guy that left United, whereas everyone else left when Ferguson said they left, or Ferguson might have kicked them a little early. But this was like, they were their biggest rivals back then, Arsenal and Man United. And yeah, Man United never lost any of their talent, and Arsenal over the years just allowed this to happen on the back set that, listen, we're building a long-term project, we're building a stadium. When it's done, everything will be rosy again. And what happened was they lost their status. Again, as Dave is saying, they're a lot like Liverpool. All of a sudden, you can't attract these top names. You're not attracting the top talent. You're overpaying to bring in guys who you're taking a gamble of, which they did with the likes of Pepe. So I think they've done this over a long period of time rather than the short term. It's not Arteta's fault. It probably happened when Arteta was back playing with them. So that tells you the story with Arsenal. And once you start that decline, it is absolutely impossible to get back up to where you want to be. Like it took, as I know we keep referring back to Liverpool, but Liverpool were down and out. We were down and out. We were nowhere. Back in 2006, you won something and it covered over 20 years of nothingness. So it's so hard to get back to the forefront. And even again, if you look at Liverpool now, they're probably not looking for the Mbappes and they're not looking for the Haalands. So does that mean it's a 7-year project, 8-year project for Arsenal to try and claw their way back up? Because once you slip and the top players in Europe don't see you as a top dog that's going to deliver silverware, Champions League, they're just not interested in you. And that's why the big scrape is always to get into top 4. And after that, whatever happens kind of happens. So Arsenal really need to get their act together and fast, or they're going to find themselves an 8th, 9th place every single season.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave that there. Dave, thanks very much. Neil, thanks very much. Don't forget bigkickoff.com if you want to go and read any of the articles, all sporting articles. Look at us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and wherever else we are, you'll find us. Type in The Big Kickoff on Google.